soul to soul, soul to soul.
Dear viewers, welcome to our show, Soul to Soul Talk Show. Today we have with us yet eminent guest Sister Kimbo. Sister Kimbo was a professional dancer and she worked in Australian Broadcasting Corporation news channel, and she is currently acquainted with Brahmakumari's institution since 8 years. Sister Kimbo, welcome to our show, Soul to Soul Talk Show.
Hello, thank you.
Sister Kimbo, tell me something about your previous career.
I was a professional dancer, so I began to study ballet at the age of 7. My mother was a ballerina, so myself and my younger sister started with ballet, classical, and then moved into tap and contemporary jazz.
Sister Kimbo, were you economically sound and how was your academic life?
My father was a builder, and when I was growing up, he was only starting his business. So I didn't come from a lot of money when I was a child, no. And my schooling, you're asking?
Yeah.
Did I enjoy it?
Yeah.
No. No, I didn't like going to school. I didn't like anything about going to school at all.
What about your college life?
My college life, the same. I didn't really enjoy it. Not very much, no. It wasn't important in those days when I was growing up to have college or academia. It was more important to get married.
Oh.
And that was the pressure my family put me under a lot. Yeah.
Sister Kimbo, I've also heard that you have traveled a lot. May I know the reason of your traveling?
Usually the reason of my travels was to experience life. And when I became very proficient at dancing, I was able to get employed and be able to travel with other dancing tours. So I traveled quite a bit from the age of 14.
What differences you found in different cultures while traveling?
Everything. Different culture, different mindset, different philosophies, ideologies, religions, the natural pristine beauties of countries, the people, the way they thought. It was fantastic. Everything was always so different. I loved it.
Sister Kimbo, what kind of religion you followed and did you follow the principles of that religion?
I was baptized, a Catholic, and no, I didn't follow the principles. I was forced to, but I didn't follow them voluntarily. And I think that's a very big difference.
Were you in search of something?
I was in search of me.
Oh.
I was trying to find who I was, always. Initially, I was always looking to experience. But in my later years, I realized that I was always trying to find who I was. That incredible question.
Were you a God-fear kind of person?
No, not at all.
Were you in search of God?
No, not when my search began. No. Because of my upbringing and the way that I was forced to go to church. I was forced to do many things regarding my religion. So when I broke free of that force, I wasn't really interested in God. You could say I became atheist completely. Yeah. And I was very happy to be atheist.
What made you to take up spirituality in your life?
That's such a wonderful question. So many things happened. In my life, so many things happened, and usually I didn't pay much attention. But about 11 years ago, a sequence of events unraveled themselves in a very short space of time. And it left me with a feeling that, oh my God, you really need to do something. Something is not okay. You really need to ask some questions and get some help.
This spirituality really helped in your life?
Absolutely, it changed my life completely. I can't be the person I used to be, it's not possible.
Where did you took this knowledge of spirituality from?
I took it in Sydney. Well, actually, 2 hours drive northwest of Sydney in the mountains, where there's a retreat centre for the Brahmakumaris.
Was the quest for searching yourself from childhood, or the circumstances made you to find your own self?
That's a very good question. And the answer is both. Absolutely. It was very important for me to understand who I was, but also why I was the way I was because of my childhood. My childhood made me into the adult I am today. So everything that happened in those days, I needed to understand. And I needed to be empowered from those experiences. Those experiences are precious. Whether they're comfortable or they're not, good or bad, it doesn't matter. But those experiences make and create the person into who you will inevitably become. So they shape you. It's important to know what they are and what they mean.
The quest for having a spiritual life was influenced by your past, or you always wanted to have a spiritual life?
Wonderful question. I love these questions. That's the only real way to answer that is to answer the last part of the question first, because I had no idea what spirituality was. I came from a place where I was not comfortable with the word God. I wasn't comfortable talking about a conversation that included God. So for me, spirituality was something alien. I didn't really know what it meant. So in answer of that question, for the spirituality aspect, no. I was searching because of my childhood. But in that search, I became to learn what spirituality meant. And when I found out what it meant, I had a search. And I wanted to continue to find out what that meant, with all the determination in my body.
Did your search end?
My search has ended. Absolutely. Bilkul.
What was your reason for traveling?
Began traveling was to understand that there were other cultures, because I began to realize that the culture I came from, I wasn't so happy with. I was feeling limited. I was feeling that the culture had limitations, was putting limitations on me, on my growth. I'm articulating this in an older body. I'm talking about many, many years ago. So the other reasons were that I knew there was an answer somewhere to who I really was. I knew that very deep down. I couldn't explain that to you in words at that time. It's very easy for me to talk now like this. But in those days I was driven to experience and find something else where I could know who I was and be comfortable with who I was. Because I wasn't comfortable with who I was in the West. In fact, I was, as I grew older, I was becoming more uncomfortable. And I didn't like it at all.
You said you were uncomfortable in your culture.
Mm.
May I know the reason why you were uncomfortable in your own culture?
Because everything in my culture taught me that everything that I needed was available externally of myself. I was taught that in order to connect with me, I needed to connect with something outside of me. So therefore, everything on display for me in the West was about external resources, was about having this, that, more of those. A car, a house, pretty things, clothes, jewelry. All of those things were brainwashed to me. And that's what happened in my culture. And I didn't like it. I always knew that there's something not okay with this. I really don't like it. But I could never articulate that. I could never describe it. I could never actually talk about it.
When did you realize that you were uncomfortable in your culture?
At a very young age, probably around 7, 8, because I remember the day specifically when my mother started talking to myself and my younger sister and said, "Kimbo, would you like to go and see where I learnt to do ballet?" And my sister and I went, "Yes, please." And we went and we saw a ballet class. And then I knew there was something very different.
So did you ever drink? You were working in a news channel, that is Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and you were also a professional dancer. Since you are from West, so was it a part of your lifestyle also?
Absolutely, yes. I started drinking when I was 14. And 14, at the age of 14, was the very first professional appearance I made as a dancer outside of Sydney. And after we finished that particular performance, I distinctly remember the musicians that were playing for the dancers said, "Would you like to come down for a drink?" I'd never had any alcohol. I said, "Okay, fine, chalo, let's go." And, you know, it was very interesting what happened that first drink. The first sip, the second sip, it was a remarkable feeling. And I now understand it took the fear away from my body. The fear of being me. It took it away. And I made a conscious decision that this was a good thing and I would continue. So I drank for a long time. I drank for 3 decades. And I stopped quite some time ago.
You started drinking because of fear. What was the reason?
Fear of being me. You see, the drink, the alcohol itself, masked the fear. It covered the fear. So suddenly I was sitting with myself, feeling very comfortable. And that was an amazing transition for me, because prior to that, I'd always been really quite uncomfortable. I didn't realize it. I didn't even realize it then consciously. But the drink, the primary emotion attached to having a drinking problem, alcoholism, is fear. It's the primary emotion. It drives people to drink. And I was completely full of fear on many levels. So I ultimately wore a mask because I wasn't allowed, and I felt I wasn't allowed to be Kimbo. These were the messages I was receiving in my childhood, in my family, in my society. So in order to function, in order for me to act in the world, I needed an external resource to aid my emotions, to aid my fear, to curb my fear, to keep my fear down, so it wasn't coming up and impacting me from being someone in the world. So it was an amazing resource.
Because of this fear, did you start smoking also?
Yes, I did. And the primary emotion attached to nicotine is anger. And I was very angry. So I was very scared and I was very angry. And I smoked for 28 years. So I gave up smoking 2 years before I gave up the alcohol. And the cigarettes were far more difficult to stop than the alcohol. The alcohol was easy peasy, but the nicotine was very, very difficult, very challenging.
You started drinking and smoking. Did it make your life stressful, and did it make you happy and feel your own self?
Absolutely. It made me feel very special. It made me feel confident. It made me feel like I had a purpose in life. It made me feel like I was normal. So it allowed me to function. And that was very dangerous, because accessing those resources externally, only accessing external things to fill me, to make me okay with me, is extremely life-threatening, because long-term I become totally reliant on those resources. After a while, I can't function unless they are available. And without them, my fear and my anger is there again. So for a small time, for many years, it was fun. It was great. I felt wonderful. But then my fortune was they stopped working. And some people would say, oh, that must have been terrible. Well, it was. It was extremely terrifying. And it made me feel like not living. However, that was Baba's intervention then, because anything I wanted to use to make me feel happy stopped. So I was forced to ask myself, well, what do I do now? My God, I thought I had the answers. I thought partying, I thought, using this and using that was great, and it was doing wonderful things for me, but it's not doing it anymore. What do I do now?
Were smoking and drinking your friends?
Yeah, they became my best friends. They became the two most responsible and reliable people I had in my life. If any human being or any situation let me down, I could always rely on both to fix everything. But as I said, after a very long while, they stopped working. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. The scariest and the best.
Were you addicted to smoking and drinking?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't understand what addiction was. I now do. But yes, I couldn't stop. Addiction is something that, the simple definition of addiction is something that you can't stop. Not simply about drinking or smoking. An addiction is a behavior. It's workaholism, it's shopping, it's listening to my iPod, it's on the computer. I tell myself I want to stop doing this, and I try desperately with all my heart to stop, but I can't. I'm not able to. It's not something I have the capacity to do. The addiction is in control of me, and that's this empowering part of addiction.
Means whenever you were stressful, you started smoking and drinking?
Always. Always. In the end, I was drinking every day. In the end, I was drinking to get up in the morning. In the end, I was drinking to walk out of my home. In the end, I was drinking to go to work. And in the end, I was drinking to go to sleep. So I needed it all the time. I became so reliant on it. It became that crux, that reliable crux for me. It became very important.
It was a really important part of your life.
It became more important than me. It became so powerful because I knew I needed it. I knew it didn't need me. I needed it. And that's a double-edged sword, because I started drinking because I was scared. Now I can't stop, and it's making me more scared than I was before I started.
You were of the fear that if you leave this, you will again go back to your past, when you weren't find of your own self.
Yeah.
You were uncomfortable in your own culture.
And that's what was happening. Yeah. When it started to stop working, I was feeling the same very fear I was feeling all those years before, except I was feeling those feelings in an adult body. And one thing that happens when you start drinking, primarily I'm talking about alcohol now, but I started at 14. Emotionally, I was not developed. So as soon as the alcohol became a habit, a daily, initially on the weekends, then every weekend and long weekends, and then maybe, a few extra days or lunches or whatever, but it gets a lot more. And then, before I know it, I've increased the amount of alcohol that I have in my life, but my emotional development has completely curtailed. It's stopped. It's like it was paused. So when I stopped drinking, I was emotionally very young. That's very scary, to be in a very adult body and emotionally so young, so immature, so unable to cope with life on life's terms.
Even male dominancy was the reason for smoking and drinking?
It was definitely a part. in my life. There were many, many reasons why. I had every reason. I could give you every reason why my life wasn't good and I needed to this and I wasn't happy, and because I liked to blame. That's how I was brought up. We always would blame other things in our lives. And male domination was a huge factor for me when I was growing up. My family was male dominated. The society was male dominated. All my decisions were male dominated. So if I wanted to do anything, it would always be a male somewhere in front of me telling me what to do.
Did your family stop you doing from this smoking and drinking?
No, nobody could stop me. Not even me. See, you can't stop something as an addiction. You can't stop it until you're ready. And the only way you'll be ready is when you say, I have a problem. That's why most people can't stop. That's why willpower has nothing to do with it. Everyone says, oh, you can't stop because you don't have willpower. That's a myth. You have to accept that there's something not okay with you and your life. And that's what happened. The alcohol stopped working because of Baba. And I realized, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And I started searching. And when the student is ready, the teacher always appears. Always. Sometimes more than one teacher. And in my case, many teachers.
You stopped smoking and drinking. There has to be some reason that has taken the place of smoking and drinking. May I know the reason?
That is such an excellent question. Because in order to stop something, you need to replace it.
Yeah.
So I had to find what I could replace it with. And fortunately, I found the Brahma Kumaris Retreat Center in Sydney, and I started to learn how to meditate. And that was a life-changing experience. The very first time I went to the retreat center. Because when I went to the meditation hall, I didn't know how to meditate. I'd only just arrived. I was early. And the center in charge said, just go to the meditation hall. I went, I've come here to learn. I don't know what to do. What do I do? She said, just go. It'll be fine. So I walk in, I sit down. This is beautiful. I could feel the energy immediately in the room. I thought, wow, this is fantastic. What is that? And I sat, and I had this beautiful, peaceful experience. It was overwhelming. And then the rest of the weekend was, as they say, history, you know? And I've never looked back. I've been practicing Raj Yoga meditation ever since. So what I've replaced this fear and this anger with is, as you know, Ruhani Nasha, spiritual intoxication, which I've only been able to learn through the discipline of the practice of meditation called Raj Yoga, which is taught by the Brahma Kumaris. Bas.
Thank you so much, sister, for
Thank
sharing your experiences. We'll be continuing our show in the next episode and know more about Sister Kimbo's experience. Thank you.